Paul because he provided us with a lot of photos and inspiration to get those books done. And I wouldn't probably have done it without friends like Paul. Jean has become a friend too, and I'm very glad that he's here tonight. I don't know Clay, we met tonight, but I am excited about their book. And I hope that you will have them autograph it and take it home with you. It makes a great present. So I'm going to turn it over. You ready, Jean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, now we've developed a system here. I think you guys are our 18th show this month.
19th.
19th. So, can you see that, Paul? Sure.
And you're stuck over here too.
All right.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I think.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Let's turn up the volume a little bit. All right. So we can.
Do you want dimmer lights or is this okay?
We can dim the lights. Is there a possibility of dimming them a little bit?
And the mic.
It's right here.
There we go.
All right. Ooh,
Good.
what a nice microphone. I do. Well, we're going to speak into it, and I'm going to be your...
It's not treble enough for me.
Not treble enough. Well, we'll be treble. You and I will sing tenor.
Treble or trouble?
Treble.
Yeah, both of them. So, we've been on the road since October 28th, which was Paul's 80th birthday, and that was the day our book was to launch. So let's start with a rousing chorus. Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Paul. Happy birthday to you.
And many more.
Thank you. Did anybody bring any donuts?
Cookies.
You know, he did tell Monica he wanted donuts. So John and Monica, if you don't have donuts,
John's going to get one right now.
okay.
Tell John to do that. I don't need it. I'm already overweight. What kind of donuts is he going to?
You agreed on the phone it was going to be a maple bar. Get out there and get it.
No, John, don't bother John. No. John's worked too hard and is ordering around too much. Right? We know him.
Yes.
Okay, so Paul and I are going to be sharing a microphone.
Started the show yet?
We're about to start. We're about to look at your life, and here we go. Listen closely. It's coming through the speakers of my computer.
This is Your Life, a program for all Americans. And now here he is, Mr. This Is Your Life himself, Ralph Edwards.
All right, well, that's me. It's not Ralph Edwards. Here we go. And I think the last time we came here was with our last book, which was for 11 years ago, Washington Then and Now.
Was it this room? Do you remember?
I don't think it was this room. I think it was upstairs. This is Paul in the war years, 1942, and he calls this.
Yeah, this is Saving the World for Democracy. It's the backyard of a parsonage in Grand Forks, North Dakota, about 1942, or 3 maybe.
And this is this position was what really defined the rest of Paul's life. He still carries a flag and a gun everywhere he goes. There's Paul as a baby, and he will now introduce his brothers.
Thank you very much. I'll introduce my brothers now. They are Ted, the oldest, who is holding me. He turned out to be a psychoanalyst. And then there's Norm, who is the pretty one, the upper right one, the pretty one. He turned out to be an employment manager for Washington Water Power. And then the other one, Dave, turned out to be a preacher. And like our dad, who was a Lutheran preacher, except my brother was more New Agey, more, what do you call that?
Well, he was still a fundamentalist, wasn't he?
Yeah. What do you call the New Age Christians? They're charismatic.
Oh, charismatic.
Right.
Okay. Nuts. All right, let's go for it. There's Paul sitting in his
Thank
older
you very
brother's
much.
lap.
What did he turn out to be?
What's that?
They want to know what you turned out to be.
Oh, I'm a skeptic, really, very much a skeptic, yeah.
Here they are.
I'm sorry to you guys, you true believers, but we can talk about it after this speech if you want.
Here they are again. I took this about 15 years ago. This is Paul and his brothers. And he's the handsome one is still the handsome one. There he is. He's still the pretty boy, and he's got the glass of wine too.
He was, all these guys were sweethearts. They were really wonderful people. My parents were too. Now, they're all gone. Everybody's gone. I'm the last one. And everybody died between the age of 77 and 83. And I'm 80. So you see, I'm right there, you know, I'm just hovering right in there. Thank you for that encouragement.
Well, Paul has been saying this is,
A little weight, you know, just so I can,
Paul's been saying this is his farewell tour. Like Leonard Cohen did 5 of them. This is the first of Paul's 5 farewell tours.
I've been thinking about writing some music, Gene. I don't know, but we'll see.
Let's get started after the show. Here's Paul with his father Theodore, the Reverend Theodore, and his mom Cherry.
Yeah, that's Cherry. Ida Garino was her name, Ida Garino. Yeah, they were all from Wisconsin or so. Around Wisconsin, yeah.
We're going to jump now several decades to when Paul in late 1960s founded the Helix. How many remember the Helix?
Oh, yeah.
How many delivered the Helix? Okay. Well, the Helix, of course, is a magnificent piece of work, and many of the covers were designed by Paul's good friend Walt Crowley, and I used them, not that one, the next one, and I used them to, I'd cut the pictures out and put them on my wall, and just to offend my mother.
Oh, you bad boy. Bad Gene. Now this is a poster for the first of the 3 rock and roll festivals we call the Sky River Rock Festival, and Walt did this. It's unusual for Walt, though. It doesn't really, to me, it doesn't look much like Walt, but look, let's try that. How many of you know the name Walt Crowley? And you know him probably maybe from his time on television, maybe? Yeah, okay. That's it, TV does it every time.
Well, he also was one of the founders with his wife Marie and Paul of HistoryLink, which is our statewide history. How many of you know HistoryLink? Oh yeah, everyone knows that. Well, that's Walt's baby. And here, Walt did this poster, and you can look at some of the names here. We've got Santana and the Youngbloods and San Francisco Mime Troupe, Richard Pryor. This was a multi-day rock festival held on a farm a year before Woodstock.
I set the stage up for Richard Pryor. I didn't know anything about him, but learned.
Here's Paul at the same festival, standing next to his friend Tom Robbins, and he has a girlfriend down in the lower right-hand
I
corner.
know Tom Robbins. Did you ever read a novel by him? Raise your hand if you did. Quite a few of you, okay. Very good.
Lives in La Conner now?
He does live in the
He
Conner.
was there, even ever then, he was living in La Conner. So he's been there, practically moved there. I think he moved there in about 67, I'd say. Yeah.
Now, this is one of the few moments of sun at the festival, and you can see why they also called it Mud River.
Yep.
Okay. Nobody in this picture. Every show we've asked if anyone is actually admitting to being in this photo.
Did any of you go to any of those festivals? Okay, well, that's because you live on this hill out here, and it's not your class.
All right, let's go forward now. So we're going to jump another decade. This is the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, and Paul brings out 294 glimpses of Seattle, and he sold it for 294 cents, a penny a picture.
Good deal. Good deal. So 40,000 of them.
So within about 6 months after this, he started his Seattle Times column in January of 1982. And as part of working on the column, he got to know some rather extraordinary people. One of them is, anyone know who this is? Well, that's Paul on the left.
Yeah.
Who could it be on the right? Well, his book that he wrote in the 50s has never been out of print about Seattle. It's probably the great classic of Seattle history.
Right, very good. Yeah, Skid Road, yeah, right. Mary Morgan, that's who it is.
And he was actually your mentor, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a good friend. I enjoyed his writing a lot and learned a lot from his writing, and from him. He was a friend.
What more could we ask? This is Paul interviewing Lucy Campbell Coe, who in, I think this is mid-'80s, and he told me once he'd interviewed 4 or 5 women. 5 women?
4.
4 women who had been witnesses to the Seattle fire as children.
They were kids, of course, but there were no men that lived that long, just women.
Like how long?
Speak up.
How long did they live?
But they lived a long time because that fire was in '89, and I was talking to them in the 70s. So they had to be kids, wee kids, but they remembered it because typically people went up on the hill and looked down at the fire.
So we jump forward another few years. This is 2011. Paul and I did a show called Now and Then at the old Mohi. And we took pictures from our statewide book. We took new photos from around the city and the region. And we had our friend Bérengère come from Paris, and she did a wonderful foyer full of Now and Thens from Paris, a number of which were taken by Paul when he was 16 years old in Paris, the last time he'd gone to Paris. And so Bérengère took this photo.
I was a delegate at a convention as a teenager. Yep, for the YMCA.
Oh my gracious.
But except it wasn't the YMCA, it was something connected with the YMCA. But we didn't go to the meetings anyway, but we just went out and looked around Paris. We were there 10 days, but I don't think very many people went to the meetings.
Paul actually took some spectacular photos for a 16-year-old, and I think they really were marvelous. And last summer when I took my kids to London and Paris, we repeated a couple of them, put them in the column. So this is Bérengère on Paul's back porch, and she had joined us for the show. I'm going to now flick to the last little, our last little bit of fun before we get into the book, and this is from 2005 when we first went over to see Bérengère, 6 years before this photo was taken. And we first went over and we saw something rather extraordinary. So if there's any shaking of the camera, it's because I'm laughing so hard. So here we go. Here we are in Paris, 2005.
Oh, that's incredible. He looks very much like me, doesn't he? He does. With the glasses, with the glasses. Here we go. Take this video. Okay.
Fooled you, didn't we?
Okay.
So Paul heads back, and then Bérengère says, no, go back. I got to get a picture of this. So she has her, she's a French photographer, and she's taking the portrait now. And here we go. Now watch as they both look up. In about 15 seconds, they're both going to look up, and they have an identical, wonderful expression. And I can't help but laugh. Okay, and here's Bérengère's portrait of the two of them, side by side. Isn't that marvelous? How often in your life have you met your exact doppelganger? So close that if you were walking down the street, everyone would walk up to you and say, "Hi, Paul," or in this case, "Hi, Father," because Bérengère went back a few years later and tracked this guy down in central Paris, and it turns out he was a Romanian Orthodox priest. And he received a major award for the successful and beautiful restoration of his downtown Paris church.
Yeah. That's true. Go ahead. Let's go to the show.
We're going to the show now. So we're just going to, quickly run through
Take
it.
a break or anything?
We can pause. We can take a little. Yeah.
Very good.
Where's the donut, John?
John's on his way to get it.
Oh man. Okay.
Where's John?
He's updating the calendar.
Oh boy, I'm gonna eat that publicly if he actually brings it. And I'm gonna apologize to him too. And we'll be sincere.
This is the very first column that Paul wrote, January 17th, 1982. It's the return in 1919 of the 63rd Coastal Artillery from First World War. Huge celebration of these Seattle boys coming back.
Oh, that's all right, I don't have anything to say.
Okay. So we're going to just wander through this show quite quickly so we can all go home and
You can ask
get it.
questions.
You can ask questions if you'd like.
The triangle building in the photo.
It is not still there.
Is that the sinking bridge corner?
This is not. Where this is, and if we go there today, you'll see it. This is 4th and Pike. We're at Westlake, and that triangular building has disappeared. Here's,
The one on the right is still.
yes, that's the corner that you're thinking of. The Flatiron is gone.
Where the first Bartels was?
That's it.
You got it, the Martell took the place, yeah, Bartels, yeah. Where they sold a lot of my books, that Bartels place. Whoa, hundreds of books they sold there.
So here we are today. As part of my job, I think, over the last couple of years, I need to go back and repeat these photos with as significant an event as I can find to reflect the original photo. And this one was the largest march in Seattle history on January 21st, 2017.
How many of you went to that march?
It was the Women's March.
Women
Yep.
were there, look at that, there's a guy that was there, there's a guy. Most of
Which will happen
them,
again this year as well.
Speak up.
It'll happen again this year.
Okay, I'll be there. No, I can't walk.
So here we go, and here's Paul's original photo that he took in the fall of '81 in preparation for the column, with a barista holding the picture in her hands.
What do you mean, oh yeah? How do you know that?
I just now saw the picture down in the corner.
Oh, I see, gotcha, okay.
And here it is. So the way we've organized the book is with using Paul's columns over the years as the organizing principle. His first column in the book from '82 is the first column that he wrote. And we choose about 100 subjects from the following 37 years up to this summer, and they are sequential in order, following the order of the original columns. Does that make sense? So,
They are not themselves chronological, so there may be older ones and then newer ones, but they are the chronology of when we put them in the paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
so that's the very first one in the book, and there's more than 100 columns actually that we reference. We chose 100 subjects, and some of them need more than one column, so we probably have about 110 actual columns that we choose from.
And boy, and Jean did the editing on that. He chose the images, and then he went out and did the contemporary photographs. Sometimes it took him 4 or 5 or 6 visits to get one he wanted. So the book that he made, largely, he's the real power behind this book, really is a wonderful display of the contemporary city. So when you think about all your relatives in Peoria, Illinois, and in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, you're going to want them to get one of these books for them. Buy more than one copy, please.
Well, this is an example of what Paul's talking about, and this one, I'm afraid, this is a portrait of failure. Or maybe not. Let's take a look. Well, this is the deepest snow in Seattle history. 1880, January. 64 inches fell in 8 days. This is after it's melted down a little bit, but Paul is now going to describe the buildings that you're looking at First and Cherry.
The building on the right is Henry Esser's Hall, which was the real sort of community center for meetings and dances and banquets and visiting preachers and all of that. And then behind it is the sheriff's home, Wyckoff, on the southeast corner of 2nd and Cherry. And then up the street on 4th Avenue, you can see the First Baptist Church. And sort of the horizon is around 6th Avenue, which is not the top of First Hill, but it was the horizon of it from this point of view, and still is.
So today, I went back to our last snow.
I think we should give Jean applause for going out in that snow. Getting this retreat.
It was treacherous, and I want to call your attention, even though I failed to some extent, I did get the snowflakes, and I want to look at that little pile up on top of the hydrant.
You didn't take that with you from the, let's say, the freezer in your... All right.
Oh, I didn't manipulate this.
You wouldn't do that.
Well, we had Greg Nichols' wife, Karen, show up for one of the book events, and as he was signing, Paul looked up at her. She'd seen this picture, and he said something like, "Well, I guess you don't like that snow photo, do you?" I don't know. You were just taunting her.
No, because he was unfairly lost his job because of the way he was treated, by the way he had to deal with that snow, that big snow of '83. When was it?
Oh, it was 2006 or 7 or something.
No, I don't remember anymore. I remember it. I was out walking the neighborhood then.
Well, here we are looking at a photo by the great Norwegian photographer who was only in Seattle for a few years, but he took some spectacular photos of the city, and then he went back to Norway and summoned by his wife.
Oh, yes, his wife. They both went back from Seattle to Norway to visit the family, and then they were going to return to Seattle, but his wife had news that she wasn't going to go back to Seattle, and that if he wanted that marriage to survive, he better stay in Norway with her. So she won, as the wives usually do, and there he stayed. And what happened to him, Gene?
Well, so he did, before he went back to Norway, he did take a few photos. He spent some years taking photos of Seattle. This is one of the classics. It's looking down from his back, as I think he's at Pike, isn't he?
Between Pike and Pine, between Pike and Union.
And he's looking back towards the waterfront. And today, let's take a quick look, and you'll see my students from Hillside School, where I teach drama. And they are on the waterfront. We do little history seminars, and I take them down and show them old photos, and we talk about the city as it once was. And of course, there's another portrait right here of soon-to-be-lost viaduct. It's going away, and Paul is now going to ask you to vote.
Now, we're going to vote on that, whether or not you think the viaduct should be kept or done in like it was for the tunnel. All those in favor, let's say, keeping the viaduct, raise your hand.
Yes.
Raise it high so we can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You cannot, Clay can't vote though, he's not part of this group. How many of that? Okay, how many we had? It was about half and half? All right, now we're gonna let Clay vote. Wait, Clay, how would you vote for this?
Well, of course I'd vote to keep it. This is West Seattle's and Magnolia's and Ballard's lifeline, and it also is the most spectacular view for rich and poor anywhere of the lay of the land in Seattle. And we're trading it for 2 lanes each way underground and have to pay for the privilege.
There you have it. Now, how many of those who didn't vote for keeping it are now convinced to keep it? Raise your hands if that... No, I think it sounds like the split in the country we've got now. No. Well, anyway, you said that eloquently, Clay, but you didn't win any hearts, I think. But it was pretty 50-50 anyway, so.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're not counting our national vote, Paul.
Wait until after 10 or 11.
Then we'll see. We'll see what happens.
What's happening then?
They closed down the viaduct.
Yes,
Yeah, I'll be staying in Wallingford, thank you.
Well, let's jump forward. We've got another Anders Vilsa shot. This is a little bit further south on the waterfront. I'm going to point out a little sign here that you might just be able to see. It's portable aluminum houses, weight 150 pounds. Now that's portable. That's pretty portable. especially if you're climbing up the mountains into the Yukon, which is,
Yeah, a guy your side is portable, yeah, sure, you could move anything, but not some of us.
well, when you were young, Paul, you were a monster. Yeah, you could.
Now, I noticed we have a visitor that just came in, and it's John. John, are you here now? Did you return? Stand up, John. Now, could you raise your hands once, please? And the other hand, too? There's nothing in them. That's too bad. Anyway,
Yeah, it was a good try. Oh, man. You think he's kidding? He wants that donut now.
I know, I've been hearing he's been complaining.
You have a box. It's a
birthday.
box. Happy birthday. Holy cow. A dozen.
Can we cut these in half?
Yeah,
We have a knife anywhere?
after the show, we'll cut them all in half. There we
Cut them in
go.
half and share them with the group. I want to show you how generous I really am.
Contrary to popular belief.
So this is 98, 99. This is in the same period that 100 ships left, in about a 6-month period, headed for the Yukon. And it's a lovely photo, and I love it because everyone is walking away. They're headed to Alaska. Look at them all walking, heading north.
Okay, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
Someone
and
asked, didn't they? Where's Alaska?
that's right. Get your aluminum hut right here.
That's the solution
Let's
to our
look at it
homeless
today.
situation.
This is where are you asking, where is this? It's Seattle waterfront, near the foot of, it's pretty close to.
Well, that's Marion Street overpass.
Marion Street overpass, for instance. Thanks, Gene. You rescued me there.
That's the ferry dock, yeah.
And that's the ferry dock. So after he left Seattle, Anders Vilse became sort of the Norwegian national treasure, one of the great photographers, and they released a series of stamps. And I just found one and put it in the show because it's kind of lovely.
And nowhere on any of these stamps will you find any thanks to his wife. Which is really, that's disturbing.
So here we go. Aha, well, let's take a look here. We're just going to flip our way through this show. And here we have the just topped, but not quite completed, 35th floor of the Smith Tower, looking down over central, we're at 2nd and Yesler, we're looking down over central Seattle, and there's, for the first time from this perspective in the city, you can see Queen Anne, you can see Wallingford, you can see, and over here, there's Magnolia, you can't quite see it.
Queen Anne High School on the hilltop.
Queen Anne High School right there.
Yes, you bet we're here.
This is 1913. We are now looking down over the city. The photographer that took this shot is now looking down over the city. No one has been up except a couple of photographers and the workers. And so it'll be another year before everyone else can go up to the observation deck and see this. But I want you to keep your eye now on the Rainier Club.
How did they get the picture?
Oh, he was taking the picture. He was up top. They just let him go up the elevator and go up to the top. But the cladding has not yet been put on the building, so it's still, you've got...
They're working on the cladding, it's not done.
So he was up before anybody else could.
Let's ask that important question. How many of you actually went to Queen Anne High School here? Look at those hands. You see that? That's more than raised their hands for the Bible.
So watch this transformation. We're looking at the Methodist Dome there. You're looking at the Rainier Club. And of course up on the hill there's the St. James. And here, the Queen Anne High. So I want you to keep your eyes on the Rainier Club and then look around, see what happens when we go to today's view from... Oh, that's an old hotel. That's about to turn into a...
That was the Rainier Hotel, built right after the fire for the mass of workers and customers they expected following the fire. And there was so many other hotels built in that first 10 years that it didn't last about that long. And the innards, the linings of it, the accoutrements, the beds and the like wound up in another Rainier Hotel on First Avenue. And this was turned into kind of a hospice for nurses, not a hospice, pardon me, what do you call it, where people live places, a what? Yeah, a hostel for nurses, yeah.
Paul gave me a photo to take there, and
I did bad there.
it was hilarious because I went back there and I almost got arrested.
I gave them the wrong address.
They tried to take me down, it was after 9/11, so everyone was very paranoid.
Whenever he gets heated up about something I've done, all he has to do is look at me and say, remember the hospice. Remember?
Well, the nurses.
Rather, yeah, okay. That's it, let's get away from that.
Okay, so here we are looking, I want you to keep your eyes on the Rainier Club, and we're going to just move forward to our appearance there.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I don't see Queen Anne High School. You can still see, however, there it is, just a little lovely St. James up on the hill. But there's the Rainier Club. There.
Goodness gracious.
Well, that's really wonderful. I wonder if we could just take a break right now to give John an applause, okay?
John, yeah, because Paul wants to eat the donuts right now.
Donuts on my mind, you see, donuts up here. Go on to the show, Gene.
Okay, I'll go on. Have a donut. This is a section I'm going to go through quickly. This is the...
Oh, this is, you guys know what this is.
Say it together.
George Washington Memorial Bridge.
George Washington Memorial.
What's the name of the boat? Come on, come on. You guys know it's the Aurora Bridge, George Washington Memorial. What's the name of the boat? Let's go. Here we go. The boat, the Four-Master.
He's going to give you a present if you know it. He's going to give you half.
The Monongahela. Built in, I should do this like an announcer, Monty Hall or something. The Monongahela, built in 1880 in Glasgow. He was right.
You get an entire donut.
Of his choice. He gets a donut of his choice. Monongahela was built in 1880 in Glasgow, went through many transformations and names. It had just spent 3 or 4 years in Lake Union because we weren't really using four-master sailing ships in 1931 anymore. It was towed out before the cantilevers closed, sold off eventually to a Vancouver logging company where it became a barge, and then scuttled. So let's look at this today.
Oh, isn't this nice? What is it? Oh, this is an example, it seems to me, of why you should buy at least 3 copies of this book. Because it shows the picturesque Seattle. It shows a really lovely kind of sampling of Seattle's generous scenery, and also the way Gene handled it, with the clouds. I mean, he probably went there 5 times just to get that. Was it 5 times?
I went there 4 or 5 times, but this is another tragic, the best boat I could get to replace, I couldn't. There it is. That's my little itsy-bitsy Monongahela. But they raised the Fremont Bridge for it, so, I could hear
I don't think you failed at all in that. It's a spectacular collection, and they're going to buy 3 books, I think.
Well, let's go forward. We're going to now look at, we're headed up to the top of the George Washington Memorial Bridge, and we're going there using the Taft key, which is a gold, a telegraph key made entirely of gold. It was gold found by the fellow who discovered gold in the Yukon, George Carhart. He studded the key with 22 various chunks of gold that he found in his own claim. He had the gold inscribed and made into a beautiful key and mounted on Alaskan marble. This is my Monty Hall section of the show. And he gave it to President Taft, and Taft used it to open the Alaska-Yukon Pacific Fair, the exposition, the first Seattle World's Fair. And it turns out it was used repeatedly to open events all over the country, but particularly in Seattle. In 1932, February 22nd, it was used to open the George Washington Memorial Bridge on the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. And the story is that the governor at the time, Roland Hartley, was a fierce opponent of of Highway 99 and did not want the bridge to be completed. But when he saw,
when he saw what, Gene?
he was from, one of the reasons was,
He was from Everett. That's right. That's right. He was a anti-public works politician from Everett. I don't think they were all anti-public works from Everett, but they were then.
And so,
Republicans, you know, Republicans. Do any of you have friends that are Republicans? Okay.
I have friends that are Republicans.
Go ahead.
Well, and this is where we come together in our historical. So, Republican Roland Hartley did not want this 99 to go through. But what he did do is he stood up in front of the crowds before they rushed out onto the bridge, before the festivities began. And on that day, he delivered a rousing speech, self-praising and bloviating about the wonders of the Ura Bridge and taking credit for the building of it. And at 2:57 on that day, Herbert Hoover across the country pressed the Taft key, interrupting Roland Hartley, and the crowds cheered, poured out onto the bridge, the flags unfurled, the fireboats below sent off their streams, and Roland never finished his speech.
You know, you make me think about something right now, Gina. How would Roland Hartley have voted on the tunnel? What do you think about that? No, on the tunnel.
On the tunnel.
Yeah, well, it's one unit, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think he would have been against it.
Get it?
I think you put it probably right.
Probably been again the viaduct too.
He would have been against the viaduct as well.
Go together, yeah.
So here we look at this crowd of adoring, they love the Aurora Bridge, and here it is today. Still too narrow.
Gene?
And this is Herbert Hoover.
Gene, can you go back? How did you get this photo?
You know, there's no way to get the exact repeat of this photo because the hillside is covered with trees. So I have a 21-foot high pole where I can mount my camera and get into that same spot. And that lets me take, I'd say there's maybe half a dozen, 8 pictures in this book that were taken because I had the pole. So this is, and people look at me strange and ask me, you know, what is that? And I tell them it's a selfie, but I have to run really fast. There we go.
What is it, Gene?
Oh, that's Herbert Hoover, and this is February 22nd, 1932, and he's pressing the Taft key at that moment. And he's standing in the bowels of the White House. I don't know where he is. There's a radiator. It's the telegraph room. It was a cold day.
Oh, look at there. There's Mr. Hoover, and I think he came in at number 33 on rating the presidents. There you go.
But he did love donuts. I know that about Hoover as well. The key was used one more time before it was retired to the Smithsonian, and there it is, being pressed by John Kennedy to open the Seattle World's Fair, which we feature in the book. We bring the 9 millionth visitor to the Seattle Fair, who is still a native. This is young Paula Dahl. She was the 9 millionth visitor to the fair, and her parents adore her from the side. She was VIP for the day. They gave her a big dog and a very embittered sister. And she's now an elementary school teacher in Issaquah, and she keeps the sign on the wall with her students.
I wonder if there's anybody in this group that can say with confidence that they survived their childhood with their peers in the family without any, what you call that, bitter, what do you call that, sibling rivalry. Any of you? No sibling rivalry in your family? Raise your hand.
No siblings. These are the only
Is that
kids.
true? No sibling rivalry? Raise your hands, okay.
Well, let's give them an applause, a hand of applause here. That's very special. Wait, you know, my son is back here. He's the youngest person in this room, and he's 30 years old. He's sitting right back there. And he does it, I think, do you feel sibling rivalry with your brother?
Not anymore.
Certainly not in public. Okay.
I think you're all naive. Go ahead.
We're jumping to the Seattle Fire. This is one of the handful of photos actually taken during the Seattle Fire. Paul writes in his original column that many of the photographers to the south were emptying their studios and saving their equipment, but you can see up on top of the Fry Hotel, there's one lone individual right above my dot looking down, and everything here was burned, 30 blocks.
Yep, that's it. Go forward, Gene.
We're done. This is First and Spring, and here we are today. Here's another 21-foot pole shot to get about the same spot. Another shot of the fire.
Any chance that any of you remember that? None of you do, okay.
The second picture, I remember, yeah.
I just had to ask. Let's go.
Well, here we are downtown, and this is actually, I'm just going to flip right to it, but pay attention to this structure because we'll talk about it for a while as we go forward. This beautiful sort of stone, what would you call that, Paul?
Well, it's called a flat iron. That the footprint of the building, you know, is like a flat iron, right? Those things that they used to use to iron the clothes in the kitchen. So I'm not sure what does anybody know what the architectural name is for a sink, you know, with the third wall or the fourth wall?
Flat iron.
What is it?
He said flat iron.
Flat iron? Okay.
Well, this is the front of the Flatiron. Now look at it today. We're looking, this is the Pioneer Building, but behind, this is the secret here. We're looking at the very front of the sinking ship garage. So that's what that structure was. Now we're going to jump forward to the next shot. All these are in the book. This is from 1908. The structure that replaced that lost Flatiron, which was then the Occidental Hotel, was replaced soon after the fire by the Seattle Hotel, and here it is in all its glory in 1908. And it became what you all know today as the Sinking Ship Garage. Now, the Sinking Ship Garage it was the destruction that launched 1,000 restorations because Victor Steinbrück came on the scene and said, never again. And a few years later, when the market was about to be torn down, the Pike Place Market, Steinbrück and thousands of others stopped it from being taken away from us.
We should give the architects of the Sinking Ship Garage some at least slight sentimental account for this and favor, because they explained to the angry public that wanted to keep the hotel that they were appreciative of their sentiment regarding the architectural qualities of the post-fire neighborhood, and that they had designed a top for the Sinking Ship Garage that was taken from the basket-handled, typical basket-handled fenestration or windows that were on the in the neighborhood, like you see there on the Merchants Cafe. And if you look across this way to the Flatiron where the sinking ship is, you can see that at the top floor, the pipes up there are shaped like the windows. See that? So they went to a good deal of bother there to try to make give some sympathy, or what's the word being used now in Russian American politics?
Shade.
What is it?
Give some shade. Synergy.
Okay, sure, that'll do it.
Synergy?
Synergy, that was it, wasn't it? Yeah. Funny. Oh, boy.
So here we are looking at
Nut job we are.
the Sinking Ship Garage and the sensitivity of the original architects. We have to respect them, and
Thank you for appreciating it.
let's go forward. So, and of course, this is the market. 1907.
That may be the first day the market was open. Some of the buildings that were built in the market were put up soon after this. Like, for instance, on the far right, that's a scar there. That's now the corner market building, as Jean will show us in a moment. There. And
Right.
Another 21-foot pole shot. So,
they wouldn't let you up on that, huh?
no, where the flowers are, they don't like. I had to go back. This is a repeat shot many times over and over again.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
Gene?
they're not consistent, because I went up on that thing 30 years ago and they didn't bother me.
Well, they're more worried about it today, I think. Yes, a question.
How do you
you get the brilliant colors?
Ooh, well, we have good cameras and good
cameras, is
filters,
that
yeah.
right? Okay.
Very good.
And it was a lovely sunny day. I have a lot of photos, frankly, in which you don't have this, you go when the light is good. You enhance it to some extent with your filters, with some Photoshop. But, if you don't have a lovely day, if you don't have the clouds in the sky, if you don't have something sort of muted and well lit, you're toast anyway. You can't monkey with it to make it nice, really. So
Jean also has an app that he uses to figure out when the sun is hitting any spot anywhere in the city at any given time of day, any week. It's fantastic.
yes, it is a great app. It's a photographer's app, and I've used it for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's been enormously helpful because you can see which direction you need to be on a map, and it'll show you the angle of the sun and when it's. So here we are.
Ask the question, why don't you see if anybody knows where this is?
Oh, where do you think this is? Do we have any? Shout it out, because it's hard to hear up here. We're soft in these chairs.
Western.
It is Seattle, yes. Well done. Could be Ballard. Where else? Have we got any other bets? A donut is
Second Avenue?
Bellevue, 2nd Avenue.
Under I-5, except no I-5 yet.
Wait, what was that one?
He said I-5.
What does that mean, I-5? That goes all the way from Vancouver to
Mexico.
Well,
where?
maybe roughly First Hill.
Yeah, Capitol Hill.
That would be a little rough. It's more like Capitol Hill, yeah. But no, we give you great credit, actually, and you gave us a chance to be tough because we were a little ambiguous. Yeah, you're right, this is the freeway. Has he shown? Yeah, he did already, okay.
I just flipped to it. That's a slide from Werner. I flipped to it right when you said the freeway. I didn't preempt you. I was very sensitive to that.
And we have them both ways, you see in the book. Werner took pictures looking south and looking north, and he lived only a couple blocks away. He lived up on Belmont.
He was a Boeing engineer who would wander around with his camera. This was in the mid to late 50s. We knew that the freeway was about to be dug.
I don't know that he was an engineer. He may have done something else at Boeing,
Well, some enterprising. I've been saying he's an engineer, so we'll just have to. We'll have to.
One time, but I don't really know. I don't know anymore.
In the column, he's an engineer, but maybe he's been converted.
Well, we'll just say he is then. If he's not, he'll be thankful to us. Okay. Where's this, you guys?
Well, that's First National Bank.
Some of you have seen this, I'm sure of that.
Oh, where's it?
That's that Warren and Pine Street?
What did you say?
Warren and Pine?
Why did you choose that?
Well, because of the columns.
Is that the old
The columns.
You're thinking
That's a
of-
good guess.
Well, that's a good guess, but unfortunately,
It's wrong.
it doesn't win you the right to say you're correct.
The
You are
library,
wrong.
Is that the old post office?
You got it.
post office. yeah.
It's the old post office built in 1908. These are sandstone steps and sandstone front of it, and
Third and Pine,
it's at 3rd and Union.
Third and Union.
And it was, because of pigeon poop, it was replaced.
Pigeon poop, that makes me think of those, what do you call those things?
Donuts?
Donuts. Sorry, I'm just trying to displace your affection for them, because then I get more of them, you see.
So, here we, here we are.
I go for that, and I think of pigeon poop.
It only lasted for 50 years. And in 1958, it was torn down because the sandstone, which was chuckanut sandstone, was stained. And there were those who said a modern city should not have stained surfaces. There were a number of people who disagreed, but in 1958, they tore it down and replaced it. Evidently, they couldn't clean them satisfactorily. So they ripped it all down. And if you were a citizen of Seattle in the teens and the 20s and the 30s, you would say, meet me at the steps. And everyone would know that you meant these steps. But now there are no steps. Now we have a building that Paul will tell you about.
Well, we have a market clock, so that's not far from there.
That's true.
Yeah, this is the glass curtain building adapted to some extent a few years ago that was built to replace it. And Jean and I had an argument about this recently, and I want to see where Jean stands on this now. What do you think about this, Jean?
Well, I guess it was a glass curtain building, and it was the original design from 1960, shows a building that's covered with it looks like aluminum foil, a tin hat building. And over 30 years later, they removed some of the tin foil and put windows in it. To me, it still looks like a terrifically ugly structure with no interim entrance and no public space and no steps. And I don't like it. And the Seattle PI architectural critic in 2007 said, it's the building that drains the soul from the city. It looks like a filing cabinet tipped on its side. And that was after.
His analogy, you didn't mention his analogy.
Yeah, no, it's a filing cabinet that's been tipped on its side. And that was after they did the restoration. So it's I still find it pretty hideous.
It's ugly.
I don't agree. I don't disagree with him at all on our preference for the
old building.
the classical.
In all my life, I have never asked anybody to meet me at the 3rd and Union Post Office.
Meet me at the file cabinet.
Meet me at the file cabinet. Here we are, the photographer was standing in 1935 on top of the B.F. Goodrich building, looking down over Hooverville, which is now the Port of Seattle. And this is about 250 of the 500 houses that were scattered, the 500 sheds, shacks, houses that were scattered in here. Smith Tower in the background, and today they let me up on a hoist, and I took the same location. It's in the book.
Your relatives in Simcoe, Pennsylvania are going to really love this book.
Here we are, this is 34th and Fremont Avenue. We're looking down, we're looking north on Fremont Avenue. This is, what year is this, Paul?
Oh, I got to look at it. Oh, 41. 1941.
We're about to lose the streetcar, the tracked streetcar. It's one of the last in the city. It's about a year away from being taken away and completely replaced by gasoline-powered and trackless trolleys.
That's true. Did I supposed to say something?
No, there's the Fremont Church. You caught it up above, yes.
We did it now and then on that church, Gene. Do you remember that?
I remember they came out with their guitars and their mini skirts, and it was delightful.
Mini skirts?
I think they were wearing.
I think you may have been looking at one of the parishioners, Gene. I don't think there were a lot of mini skirts.
There was something going on there. So I had to go back and find this same location and something to replace the trolley cars. So I went back about a year and a half ago, not this last summer, but
That's why he's thinking of mini skirts.
That must be it, because of course I went back to the summer solstice, and to replace the trolley car, we have 2 women walking abreast.
Don't you love that? Let's say that together. 2 women walking abreast. Very nice, Gene. Very nice. Very good.
We're now in the International District. I didn't get it in the book. I'm sorry. We're now in the International District, and this is the Gohing Festival in 1921. You see lion dancers. They're celebrating a 6-day festival in Chinatown, and it was these were folks who had actually survived some brutal behavior on the part of our fair city, and so there's some degree of celebration.
Well, what brutal behavior?
Anti-Chinese.
What date is this?
21.
The Chinese riots were in the mid 80s. 1880s.
So I went.
The anti-Chinese.
When they're driven down to the boat, right?
When they were driven down to the boat, right,
Yeah.
and shipped out.
Shipped out.
So a reinvigorated.
By train to Tacoma.
A reinvigorated community, and today I went back very close to this seen because it's scarcely changed at all. Hotel Milwaukee is still there. I went back to the Seattle Kung Fu Club a couple doors down, and they all trooped out into the street with their master, John Liang, and he brought them all out. This is his school, and John is standing right there. He also turned 80 this year, and he taught Bruce Lee. He's been there since 1960, and is a fixture in the neighborhood.
He's in much better shape, Gene.
Well, he spent his life moving. He didn't eat that many donuts. This is a West Seattle. This is the reason we could stand in the street for 10 minutes was this West Seattle cop said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of things." Here we are.
Let's quiz him on
We're going to quiz. Go, Paul.
Where are we here?
It's like Washington.
Like Washington.
University?
University. Arboretum.
South Park.
Montlake Cut. South Park.
Black River.
Black
You
River.
win. Stand up, please. Stand up. Oh, wonderful. Did you know that all along? Were you just holding back until you're going to humiliate everybody? What's that?
I said it a couple times softly.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah, you're modest. That's fine. Black River is right.
Well, this is the Black River, I think 1906. It is several years before Lake Washington is lowered by 9 feet, ending the free-flowing nature of the Black River. And today we look at it and we see the Black River is now underground and sometimes burbles up in parks in Tukwila, but it's not navigable today.
No, it isn't, Gene.
Not by boat, anyway.
Not by boat. Rats navigate the Black River now, but that's about it. And here's 2 more faces that launched 60,000 books.
These were the Browns. They lived at the southwest corner of Lake Union, and this is about 1902. I was doing a lecture on the radio, and a guy called up the radio station and said he had this and about 200 other negatives from this time, and did I want them? And of course I did. And they'll be going with practically everything else that I collected in the way of negatives to the Seattle Public Library, because I'm giving all my negatives and slides and like that to the public library. So, but the Browns, and notice there that in the background there, you see that,
Pier.
what is that? Where is that?
Fairview.
Fairview's a good guess, but it's too far away from Fairview. This is the southwest corner of Lake Union. What principal street would there be there?
Westlake, Eastlake.
Westlake, that's right. That's Westlake when it was still a viaduct that went across the lake, you know, at the corner. So that's all filled in now. And actually, it was filled in soon after this. None of you were there at the time, I'm sure.
These are my neighbor children. In 2011, we repeated this for the Mohai show, and we went to this location, which is pretty close to where the kids were standing in the lake. And I went back at the beginning of this year and photographed Tia and Liana again 6 years after that was taken. And there they are. And Tia terrifyingly drives now.
Notice how they've gone from color to sort of black. Yeah. What do you call that?
That's called Roosevelt High School.
Is it Goth?
Goth.
Yeah, Goth, yeah.
I think it's just the way kids are nowadays. Well, let's go from there. We're going to do this again, and you need to ooh and ah as we get to the Kalakala. This is our ah moment. Here we go.
The reason he felt confident is because this is what show for us now?
19.
19.
Always had awes for that, so he felt confident about it.
Look at the crowds on this deck as it's going through the locks from Lake Union. And Clay wants you to pay particular attention to the wheelhouse up here, which these little windows were very poorly designed. But the Kalakala wandered the marine highways of our area, for a number of years. And Clay, I'm going to do this quickly. Clay, give us your sound of the Colocula. Here we go.
Well, how many of you rode the Colocula? Fair number in this room. So you'll probably remember what it sounded like when it went across the sound. I rode it when I was in high school, and I remember distinctly this, it felt like it was going to fall in. It went, anybody remember this?
Let's give
Clay a hand there for his impression of the Colocula.
Hey, did you want a donut?
What I want to do is ride on the Colocula again.
Well, that's not going to happen, but this is about 48. It's another 20 years or so before Colocula is taken out of commission, and it ends up in a checkered story of loss and sent to Alaska and came back. Well, it went all over the place, but it ended, no, it's gone now. Totally gone now, except there's a piece that you're going to see in just a moment. But I went back to the locks and I knew I had to find a big boat, and I did. And this is the USS Turner Joy. It's February of 2017. It had just finished restoration for a month in Lake Union. It was being towed back to its berth in Bremerton, where it sits as a museum ship. And after I took this photo, I discovered that it was a significant boat in American history because it was with the USS Maddox, one of the two destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. And there was an initial incident where the Maddox was exchanged fire with some North Vietnamese gunboats, and then a second incident which evidently didn't occur, but upon which the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was signed, and we got embroiled in a rather protracted war. So, and here's the USS Turner Joy off the coast of Vietnam. And here is Clay's photo of the wheelhouse of the Colocula. It is now, you can go to Salty's in West Seattle, take the viaduct for the next couple of weeks, head down to Salty's, and there, sitting in front of it, is the
You can go for your last ride on the viaduct, and you can go and see this. That's fine. Serves you right.
And here's the inside of the wheelhouse looking back towards the skyline.
Thank you very much. Gene, where are we here?
Oh, here's another story of what's about to disappear. Well, this is the viaduct, and there's Smith Tower. This is before the opening day, and when folks were allowed to wander the viaduct, and we managed to go back about a year and a half ago again, and I shot with some nice clouds, some red, and the Smith Tower. Here we go. And this is just about gone. In fact, you can't see this from now. They've already built a building in the last few months that covers up the Smith Tower from this perspective. So that's gone, and the viaduct, of course, is coming down. So we're already then and then. But I want you to look now at this structure right here, which is one that Paul and I and Clay really enjoy. And it is a building called the F5 building today. And when it was under construction, they called it the Mark. And what's kind of unique about it is that Kevin Daniels, who was the developer who commissioned it, said he wanted a building that would embody grace and sexiness and style like this. And there's the Methodist Church down below. And look at the lines of this structure. And take a look at those lines. Now we're going to see what actually inspired Kevin Daniels. He wanted to build a building that looked like Belgian-born Audrey Hepburn. And while the workers were building this building in the lobby, they had a huge picture from Breakfast at Tiffany's. in the lobby, and I love the lines and the hip and the cigarette holder and her shoulders. That's what he was looking for. And now Paul is going to lead you in song.
You guys know the song Moon River? All right, Moon River. Let's sing it together, right? Anybody want to choose the pitch? Moon River, wider than wine, I brought you a star. Someday you. We forgot. You dream like her. Well, this is disappointing.
Okay. They're waiting for donuts, Paul. You promised them donuts. All right.
Wait, we do know some people here who know all the lyrics. Those who know the lyrics, raise your hand, please. Those who know the lyrics,
Oh, we have
raise
one.
your hand.
That's it.
You know the lyrics. He's hiding, I guess.
Yeah.
You know the lyrics, Jordan?
Oh, I was faking it.
You know, will you sing the song to us or not?
Later.
Let's do it after the show. We'll have a special performance.
Privately
We're getting
after
close.
the.
We're closing in on the end here.
After the bananas, no, nobody calls
After donuts, after the donuts.
it. Donuts.
Post donut. This is Green Lake, taken by Ashel Curtis in 1903. Big changes in my neighborhood, my neck of the woods. I had to go back repeatedly to try to get this shot because it's fundamentally boring. But I found, no, it was. Coming back here, I went back like 5 or 6 times, and I couldn't. So this was a coincident day when I had the bicyclist, and I had the cars, and I had the crow, and everything came in the school bus. So I thought, well, the original shot's kind of illustrative, and here in the background.
It's like Los Angeles, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, you can't see the lake anymore. You can, however, see the Olympics in the distance.
Can you go back to the lake picture?
Sure. Let's go back.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same spot. Yeah. Now, I actually cheated in only one way, in that I put the camera up on the pole, or else you wouldn't see the Olympics at all. So in my photo, the Olympics peep over the buildings. And a crane. Yep. And here is the oldest structure still standing in Seattle to this day.
Anybody know here what that is?
Must be in West Seattle.
What's the oldest structure standing in Seattle? Where is it? Who is it related to? Who do we think of when we see it? Isn't that sort of strange that the oldest subject or structure in Seattle, none of us, we draw a blank. What's that?
Mercer's house?
It's not Mercer's
Isn't it
house.
out, it's West Seattle?
It is Alki, and
Alki, yeah.
it was originally on the shore, and
Is it the,
not Denny. Someone moved to West Seattle,
The
leaving
restaurant?
the other settlers behind. And he had a couple of wives. He was reputed to have walked down the street with them, scandalizing everybody. He was a free thinker. He was a Democrat. And everybody else were Republicans downtown. So he was kind of an outcast.
Doc Mercer.
Doc Maynard.
Maynard, I mean, yeah, Doc Maynard. Yeah.
So he took his wife Catherine. They moved out, took a couple 300 acres out in West Seattle, tried to start a farm. They nearly starved.
I doubt that starved stuff, but go ahead, say it.
Well, that's what I read in your column and in Wikipedia.
That's good reason to doubt it.
fake news?
Fake news, there you go. This is West Seattle, it's on 64th. It is unmarked. This house still exists. And Paul got this photo from the family that bought it from Maynard's estate, and here they are. This is
on the far left in the white dress on the steps is Ivor's mother. And next to her is her mother. And then the guy in the long dark, that's the grandpa, that's Hans Hansen. And the guy leaning on the tree on the far right is a in-law married to one of the sisters, and Jean has a name for him.
Snidely Whiplash. I think he was the rent collector. So we go back today to this, and this was taken in the 1890s, do you think, Paul?
1890s, yeah.
We go back today to the same house. There's a little shift. There's Clay Eels standing with his compatriots of West Seattle, and most of them are West Seattle Historical Society, and here's a neighbor. And there's really nothing to mark the spots, except at the end of the street there's a little plaque, but you'd have to walk up to see the actual house.
It's the other end, isn't it? It's the north end of the street where the plaque is?
I don't know. Where is it, Clay? North
It's
end
to
of
the north
street?
end of 64th and on Alki Avenue.
Yeah. Clay was ran the West Seattle Historical Society, the director for many years, and wrote the book, the West Side Story, as when he was the editor of the West Seattle Herald 35 years ago.
And
right?
is
35 years ago? Yeah.
and is also today the general editor of this book. So he's been a great help to us.
Who's the non-general editor?
Well, John Sisko was editing a bunch of the columns to reduce them in size to fit the pages of the book. But we're going to go forward now, and these are last couple slides. This is Kiki Soblu, who had been named by Catherine Maynard, whose house we just saw. She'd been nicknamed Queen or Princess Angeline. And here is Kiki Soblu sitting on her front porch in her shack below what is now the Pike Place Market. Ron Edge, one of our collaborators, and Paul worked hard to find where this shack was, and together they triangulated using pictures of buildings and stumps and old trees and eaves, and this is where we think it was. I went back last November with Ron Edge, and we found, and he's sitting on where they estimate her porch was.
Actually, he did a very good job of, triangulating, finding all these things and drawing lines and seeing how they intersect. And he's sitting very close to where Princess Angeline was sitting back there in the 90s.
This is the Pike Place parking garage. To the left and to the right is the fixed Medor building, and another block south is the Pike Street, the steps going up. Well, Paul is unhappy because I said it was a block, so it's not a block. Damn it!
The width of the building, that's all it is.
Right, a couple hundred feet.
And if you want to see this today, just go to the market and go to Lowell's Restaurant, go up to the second floor, look out the window, look straight down, and you'll see this little patch of green.
This too is unmarked. There are no plans to mark it, but it seems significant enough that this was Angeline's domicile. You can't get there either, it's all fenced off. This is Princess Angeline, Kiki Soblu, sitting in what is now the market, First Avenue behind her. And we have an inset of Chief Seattle, her father. And the two of them are together because we found two descendants. The woman on the left is 80-year-old Mary Lou Slaughter, and she is great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Princess Angeline. And the guy on the right is Ken Workman, who is the great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle through his second wife. And they came down to the market, and they're wearing the shawls that Mary Lou made. And these shawls are, she's a basket weaver and a rather celebrated artisan of cedar fabrics, and she's pretty magnificent. But look at her, 80 years old. Does that kind of blow your mind? Yeah, she's a beauty. And Ken is too, he's 97.
Right on his central casting is he. Central casting is where.
Ken is actually 67.
How old is he?
He's mid-late 60s, but he still looks pretty darn good.
Doesn't he? He's a handsome guy, handsome guy.
So, taking this photo, Clay stood behind me and took my photo. And in the last show we did, Ken visited us. We were in Tukwila, and Ken showed up and told his story. And the story that he told was that as he's standing here having his picture taken for about 10 minutes, he felt someone nudging him from behind. And later he said, Jean, I thought someone was trying to pick my pocket. I don't know what was going on. And Clay and I said, well, there's no one behind you, Ken. And I said, what do you mean nudging you? And he said, well, it was just like a tap on the elbow.
Sounds pathetic, doesn't it?
And Paul thinks it's all crap. But I think it's the nudge of history. Oh, pathetic. You think it's pathetic? I don't think it's pathetic.
Pathos.
Oh, you mean it's first like pathos? Yeah. Well, pathetic, I give another meaning, but.
I meant pathos. That's closer to the Greek.
Well, we'll. In any case, so I think of it as a nudge of history, and when I'm taking photos and wandering the city and previously the state, and find myself standing in the footsteps of some marvelous photographers and repeating their pictures, there's a little moment when the Rubik's Cube just locks into place, and that's where I feel that little nudge, that little golden
And I
moment.
think of his nudge as a metaphor. There you have it.
Well, I would agree it's a metaphor. But on the other hand, Ken is not speaking of metaphors. He thinks he felt a tap on his elbow from a distant cousin.
How long did it take you? 10 minutes to take that shot, did you say?
Yeah, it was about 10 minutes. Because we were trying all sorts of different angles, and they put their hats on and took them off. And we like to spend time with them. So that's the end of our show. Here is Paul standing on the back cover of the book, a photo taken by our French friend Bérengère. And as Clay has pointed out, the 37 years that Paul's done the column and the 4 decades plus that he's been our public historian, there's no other city, municipality in the country that has this kind of ongoing and in this case weekly exposure to history and change and understanding who we are, where we come from, and to some extent where we're going.
Excellent opportunity for me to ask Clay how the hell he knows that. How do you know that, Clay?
I would challenge anybody to find another weekly column like the one that you pioneered and created the formula for.
What does like mean?
I challenge anybody to find it.
What does it mean, though, like it? Like it, that's a salient word you've used.
I would issue the challenge to anybody in this crowd. I don't think you can find it anywhere, and I think we all owe Paul a huge round of applause for creating this.
Let's go forward. We're going to now sign some books, and then we'll go home.
So, in the effort of not having complete chaos, we're going to move Paul and Jean and Clay over to the table where the books will be sold. If you have a chair, you can help us out by stacking them in the corner there or the corner here, and not more than 6 chairs. And then there are donuts.